I don't know who this is for today, but let me start by saying God doesn't do random. He's a God of order, a God of strategy, a God who works in silence before he reveals in public. You've been praying, God, where's my person? Before God brings someone into your life, he works on both of you separately. There's a reason Adam was placed in the Garden of Eden alone before Eve ever entered the scene. God didn't immediately drop a partner into his life. First, he gave Adam a purpose, a place, and an assignment. He said, work the garden and take care of it. He didn't say, find someone to make you feel less lonely. He said, T. That's because God knows that a partner can't fix what purpose is meant to fulfill. Some of us are asking God for a partner while we're still running from the process. We want someone to walk with us, but we haven't learned how to walk with God. And God in his mercy says, I love you too much to let you share your garden with someone before you know how to tend it. If he gave you a person before he gave you preparation, you would treat the relationship like a rescue boat instead of a kingdom partnership. That's not what he wants for you. He wants to give you someone who adds to what he's already doing in you, not someone who becomes a substitute for what only he can do. Sometimes God withholds the person because he's trying to build the version of you that can keep the blessing he wants to give. God doesn't just bless potential, he blesses stewardship. So if you're still stuck in cycles of insecurity, immaturity, or identity crisis, he's not going to throw someone into that mess to save you. That's not their job. That's God's job. And he's already doing it, even if it doesn't feel like it. Preparation is not punishment, it's protection. It's God saying, let me heal your broken places so you don't bleed on the person I send you. Because if you skip preparation, the very relationship you prayed for can become the relationship you're trapped in. A relationship won't solve what only intimacy with God can fix. You'll bring your loneliness, your fear, your wounds, your fear, expectations into something that was meant to be a blessing, and it'd be a blessing, and it will start to feel like a burden. And let's be honest, we talk about wanting someone godly, but are we becoming the kind of person we're praying for? You want someone with vision, discipline, integrity, and peace, but are you cultivating that in your own life? If God sent them today, would you even recognize them, or would you overlook them because they don't fit your fantasy? When God prepares you, he transforms your appetite. You stop craving people who make you feel safe in your dysfunction and start desiring people who call you higher in your faith. This is why the waiting season is sacred, because God's not just preparing them, he's preparing you. He's refining your character. He's teaching you how to pray, how to lead, how to follow, how to forgive. He's showing you how to break generational patterns before you build something permanent with someone else. That's not just about dating, that's about legacy. So while it might feel like nothing's happening, everything's happening. The silence is loud with purpose. God is writing a story you don't see yet. He's shaping the future by strengthening the foundation. And he refuses to put new wine into old wineskins. He won't connect you to someone new while you're still functioning in old mindsets. The blessing isn't just in the answer, it's in the becoming. And what feels like delay is often just divine preparation. Because when God prepares before he pairs, he's not just thinking about romance. He's thinking about destiny. When you step into your God-given purpose, you start radiating something deeper than charisma, something that can't be manufactured or mimicked. Purpose has a frequency. It sends a signal to the right kind of people and repels the wrong kind. That's why you don't need to chase attention, manipulate timelines, or pretend to be someone you're not. When you're walking in purpose, the right person will be drawn to your calling, not just your appearance. They'll see your heart before they see your highlight reel, because God doesn't pair people based on surface compatibility. He pairs based on spiritual assignment. Too many people are asking for a relationship while standing outside of their assignment. They want connection without direction. But when you're not aligned with your purpose, you'll attract people who match your confusion, not your calling. You'll settle for chemistry that doesn't lead to covenant. You'll become magnetized to people who satisfy your loneliness for a moment, but sabotage your destiny in the long run. That's not God's plan. God isn't just interested in giving you someone who looks good beside you. He wants to give you someone who fights with you for the vision he put inside you. When you're in your purpose, you don't have to audition for affection. You don't have to shrink yourself or beg to be noticed. You simply walk in obedience. You serve where he placed you. You grow in the dark seasons. You lead in the quiet places. And while you're doing what looks ordinary to others, heaven is orchestrating something divine. The right person is watching your consistency, not just your charisma. They're drawn to the oil on your life, not just the outfit you wore last Sunday. And that's what makes it sustainable, because attraction rooted in purpose can endure seasons where attraction rooted in emotion will wither. Some of the heartbreak you've experienced wasn't because God was punishing you. It was because you were attracting people who had no business in your future. They were drawn to a version of you that was disconnected from your calling. They liked the image, not the mission. But when you started growing, they got uncomfortable. When you started pursuing purpose, they called it pride. That's not alignment, that's misassignment. God will sometimes let those people walk away, not to punish you, but to preserve you. Because he knows that the wrong connection in the right season can still create chaos. Some of the heartbreak you've experienced wasn't because God was punishing you. It was because you were attracting people who had no business in your future. They were drawn to a version of you that was disconnected from your calling. They liked the image, not the mission. But when you started growing, they got uncomfortable. When you started pursuing purposes, they called it pride. That's not alignment, that's misassignment. God will sometimes let those people walk away, not to punish you, but to preserve you. Because he knows that the wrong connection in the right season can still create chaos. Your purpose will attract someone who doesn't compete with you, but completes the picture God is painting with your life. They won't be intimidated by your growth, they'll celebrate it. They won't resent your calling, they'll run beside it. When God sends someone into your life in alignment with your purpose, you'll find strength in their presence, not stress. You'll feel covered, not controlled. They won't distract you from the voice of God. They'll confirm what he's already been saying. That's why the waiting season isn't about passively doing nothing. It's about actively becoming. It's about cultivating your gifts, sharpening your vision, deepening your faith. Because when you walk in the fullness of your identity, your discernment gets stronger. You stop entertaining counterfeits dressed in potential. You start recognizing that just because someone's interested doesn't mean they're assigned. Purpose gives you clarity. It gives you standards. It gives you peace. You don't find the right person by looking harder. You find them by becoming who God called you to be. That's the irony of purpose. When you stop striving to be chosen and start striving to be faithful, God begins to bring people into your life who see you clearly, support you genuinely, and stay with you. You weren't created to wander aimlessly from relationship to relationship. You were designed for intentionality, for covenant, for impact. And when you walk in purpose, the person who was built to walk with you will recognize it, not because you begged to be seen, but because God gave them eyes to see what's on your life. When God is orchestrating a relationship, he's not looking at what people post, pose, or pretend to be. He's looking for alignment. Because appearance may capture attention, but only alignment can sustain a connection built to carry the weight of purpose. The world says, find someone who looks good on your arm. God says, find someone who stands strong in your calling. We've been trained to evaluate based on image, how they dress, how they talk, how they present themselves in public, but image doesn't equal identity. And too many people are entering relationships based on what they see, only to be broken by what they didn't discern. Alignment is about direction. It's about shared values, shared priorities, and a shared understanding of where God is taking you. Two people can look amazing together on the outside, but be going in completely opposite directions spiritually. That's why some relationships feel like you're dragging someone rather than walking beside them, because you're in step with God and they're in step with comfort. When your walk doesn't match, your peace will suffer, and you can dress it up with date nights and Instagram captions, but deep down you'll feel the disconnection. You weren't made to carry someone who won't even carry their own cross. God looks at alignment because he knows your assignment. He knows what you're going to face in 5 years that you don't even see coming. He knows the storm that's going to hit your house and the pressure that's going to hit your heart. And he's not matching you with someone who simply completes your aesthetic. He's matching you with someone who can stand firm with you in faith when everything else is shaking. That kind of connection doesn't come from filters or first impressions. It comes from spiritual alignment. The enemy loves to tempt us with appearance because he knows we're drawn to what looks familiar, even if it's destructive. He'll send you someone who checks every box on your preference list but lacks every trait on your purpose list. They might look like a blessing but feel like a battle. They might appeal to your eyes but drain your spirit. And if you're not anchored in who you are and where you're going, you'll fall for someone who flatters your flesh and frustrates your future. God is not interested in giving you someone who looks the part but won't play their role in his plan for your life. It's possible to be physically attracted and spiritually unequally yoked. And just because you have chemistry doesn't mean you have covenant. Chemistry can come from shared pain, shared dysfunction, or shared trauma, but alignment comes from shared purpose. It comes from both people submitting to God's timing, God's voice, and God's process. If you're forcing the connection, it's probably not aligned. If you're constantly compromising to keep the peace, it's probably not aligned. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of clarity. God wants to pair you with someone who sharpens you, not just someone who soothes you. Someone who tells you the truth when it's uncomfortable. Someone who doesn't just love your potential, but is committed to the process. That kind of person might not always look like your type, but they'll lead you closer to your calling. They might not come in the package you imagined, but they'll bring the protection you prayed for. Because alignment is about being on the same page with heaven, even when it doesn't fit your fantasy. So before you ask if they're attractive, ask if they're aligned. Are they submitted to God? Are they walking in purpose? Are they bearing fruit? Because when the storms of life hit, and you won't care about how good they looked in a selfie. You'll care about whether they can pray with you when you feel like falling apart. And that's why God prioritizes alignment over appearance. He's not just setting up a photo op. He's building a foundation. And the right person won't just look good with you. They'll walk in step with you toward everything God has called you to become. When God delays something in your life, especially in the area of relationships, it's not because he's forgotten you, ignored you, or left you behind. Delay is never a reflection of God's absence. It's a reflection of his intentionality. He's not withholding to punish you. He's holding back to protect you. And sometimes the greatest gift he can give is time to grow, time to heal, time to become the version of yourself that can fully receive and steward what you've been praying for. We live in a world that worships instant results, but God operates on eternal timelines. His timing is always strategic, and even when it feels like he's being silent, he's working in the background with precision and care. You may be asking, why hasn't it happened yet? While God is asking, will you trust me even when you can't trace me? Because waiting reveals your level of trust. Anyone can believe when doors are flying open and blessings are pouring in. But it's in the delay where God develops your depth. It's in the pause where he prunes your pride. It's in the silence where he strengthens your spirit. Delay is the training ground for destiny. It's the space where God teaches you that your identity isn't tied to your relationship status, your timeline, or your expectations. Some of the delays in your life aren't about you being behind schedule. They're about you being right on God's schedule. He sees the whole picture. He sees the character still being formed. He sees the cycles that need to be broken. He sees the unseen battles that would have broken you if he had released the blessing too soon. You're asking for a person, but he's preparing a purpose. You're begging for connection, but he's building capacity. Because if he gave you what you wanted right now, it might crush you instead of bless you. So instead, he waits. And while you think nothing is happening, he's rearranging circumstances, healing wounds, preparing hearts, and orchestrating divine moments that will all make sense later. Delay is where God detoxes your desires. It's where he exposes the false gods of comparison, validation, and fear. Because if you can't learn to be whole alone, you'll enter a relationship expecting it to do what only God can. And that pressure will break something sacred. Relationships are not life rafts, they are partnerships. And if God is making you wait, it's because he's removing the mindset that someone else is going to rescue you. He's teaching you to rely on him so deeply that when the right person comes, they're not a replacement for your healing, they're a reflection of it. Waiting seasons can feel like wilderness seasons where you look around and it seems like everyone else is getting their miracle while you're stuck in the back row. But God never overlooks his children. He doesn't forget promises. He doesn't tease with potential. If he said it, he will do it. But he will do it when it aligns with your development, not just your desire. You don't want to arrive at the promise before your heart is ready to carry it. The delay is shaping you into someone who can love from a healed place, lead from a grounded place, and receive without needing the thing you receive to define your worth. So every day you wake up and it still hasn't happened, remember that it doesn't mean it won't. Delay and denial are not the same. One builds faith, the other reveals it. And God will never delay something that's meant for you unless he's got a greater purpose in mind. What you call waiting, he calls working. What you call a setback, he calls preparation. The timeline may not look like what you expected, but the outcome will be greater than anything you imagined. God is never late. He's just too wise to rush what he intends to last. When it's from God, peace will surround it. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything going right on the outside, but the kind of peace that settles deep in your spirit even when things on the outside are still unfolding. Peace is not passive, it's powerful. It's not the absence of chaos. It's the presence of God's voice louder than the noise. And when you're trying to discern if a relationship is from him, peace is your compass. Because peace is not just a feeling, it's a fruit. And God never sends something that consistently robs you of what His Spirit is supposed to produce in you. Sometimes we're so hungry for connection that we confuse adrenaline for alignment. We think the butterflies in our stomach mean it's meant to be, but feelings can lie, emotions can shift, and chemistry can come from dysfunction just as easily as it comes from destiny. That's why God doesn't lead with hype, He leads with peace. When the right person comes into your life, it won't feel like striving. You won't have to beg, chase, manipulate, or perform. There will be a stillness, a security, a sense of being grounded, even if the situation isn't perfect. That's how you know God is in it. Peace doesn't always mean easy, but it does mean anchored. Some people bring confusion the moment they enter your life. Everything feels heavy. Your mind is anxious. Your heart is unsettled. And instead of growing in clarity, you're drowning in second guessing. That's not love, that's chaos. And God is not the author of confusion. He doesn't send people into your life to stir up fear, shame, or instability. If their presence creates more questions than answers, if their love feels like a guessing game, if their words don't match their actions and you're constantly trying to hold it all together, then that's not peace. That's you trying to make something work that God never sent in the first place. Peace will confirm what people try to confuse, because peace comes from alignment with God's will, not just alignment with your preferences. You might meet someone who checks every box on your list but doesn't give you peace. And if you ignore that, you'll end up bound by a decision that looked good on paper but lacked God's presence in the process. That's why discernment is so necessary in this generation. You can't just pray for a partner, you need to pray for peace. Not just peace about them, but peace about you. Because when your heart is healed and your ears are tuned to heaven, you won't be fooled by surface level connections. Peace is protection. God will use it to close doors that need to stay shut and confirm doors that are ready to open. And sometimes His note will sound like a restlessness in your spirit. Sometimes His weight will feel like tension you can't shake. But if you lean in and listen, you'll realize He's not being cruel, He's being kind. He knows what you don't. He sees what you can't. And when He removes someone or something that you thought was right, it's because He's making room for what truly is. The removal may sting, but the peace that follows will heal. You'll never have to force what's truly from God. It won't come wrapped in pressure. It won't demand you to compromise your boundaries or silence your convictions. It will come with peace, the kind that passes understanding, the kind that remains even when life doesn't make sense, the kind that anchors you when it meets that peace is proof. Proof that God is in it. Proof that you're not settling. Proof that love doesn't have to be loud to be real. And when you find yourself in something that brings peace to your mind, stability to your emotions, and alignment to your purpose, you'll know. Because peace is the proof you don't have to beg God to confirm. When God brings two people together, He's not trying to create a mirror image. He's building a partnership. Compatibility isn't about finding someone who thinks exactly like you, looks like you, acts like you, or agrees with you on everything. It's about finding someone whose differences don't divide you, they develop you. Too many people walk into relationships expecting to find someone who is a clone of themselves, thinking that sameness equals safety. But God doesn't design relationships to be echo chambers. He designs them to be instruments of growth, stretching, sharpening, and refining. Compatibility isn't about duplication, it's about divine alignment. If both of you were the same, one of you would be unnecessary. God pairs people not for comfort, but for completion. He gives one wisdom and the other boldness. He gives one vision and the other strategy. He gives one sensitivity and the other strength. That's not dysfunction, that's design. He intentionally places different temperaments, perspectives, and giftings in the same space to fulfill a greater purpose than either could on their own. Because the goal of a godly relationship isn't sameness, it's unity. And unity is not uniformity. It's harmony. It's learning how to walk together, even when your steps aren't identical. Compatibility in God's terms is spiritual before it's emotional or physical. It's not about whether you like the same music, went to the same college, or have the same hobbies. Those things are surface. Real compatibility asks deeper questions. Are your values aligned? Are your hearts submitted to the same authority? Do you both know who you are in Christ? Because no amount of chemistry can compensate for spiritual disconnection. You can have the same taste in movies and still be headed in opposite directions spiritually. That's why God prioritizes heart posture over shared preferences. He's not building a brand, He's building a legacy. When we chase after cloning instead of compatibility, we miss the beauty of diversity. We shut out the very traits that God intended to use to stretch us. Maybe they're more extroverted and you're more reflective. Maybe they're spontaneous and you're structured. That doesn't mean you're not compatible. It means you have the opportunity to complement each other in powerful ways. God knows what your blind spots are, and He's often brings someone who can see what you miss. That's not a threat, it's a blessing. Because compatibility isn't just about agreement, it's about alignment toward a common calling. Sometimes what irritates you at first is what God will use to mature you later. The same patience they stretch in you now is the strength you'll need in the next season. The different way they process might frustrate your routine, but God uses it to show you a new angle, a new way of listening, a new way of loving. It's not that they were wrong for you, it's that they weren't you, and that's the point. God uses their difference to develop your depth. You won't always agree, but you'll always grow. It takes maturity to embrace someone's difference as an asset instead of a threat. Immaturity says, you're not like me, so you must be wrong. But wisdom says, you're not like me, and that might be exactly what I need. The enemy wants to use differences to divide, but God wants to use them to deepen. So when He brings you someone who doesn't clone your personality, but complements your purpose, don't run from it, lean into it. Let it refine your perspective. Let it humble your ego. Let it stretch your love. Because true compatibility isn't about everything matching. It's about everything aligning for the mission God has for you both. Cloning might feel safe, but compatibility builds strength. God doesn't just match people based on what they like. He matches them based on what they lack and what they carry. It's in the differences that you discover the depth of love, the weight of grace, and the beauty of becoming one without losing who you are. God uses compatibility, not cloning, because He's not building a copy, He's writing a covenant.